Introducing the Champion's Mindset, the podcast that gives your inner game a serious upgrade. Join internationally renowned mindset and performance expert, Kathryn Orford.
Hi there, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to the Champion Mindset. Today, I want to talk to the coaches out there because I speak to a lot of coaches and they often tell me they're having quite a few challenges. And I thought I'd address those challenges today and kind of help you out along the way as far as hopefully give you some tips and things. So, one of the biggest things is boundaries with parents. Okay. Can you relate? If you can relate, pop yes in the chat because I want this to be an interactive podcast this week. So, I had a performing arts school for many years, as some of you know, and really, I had very, very clear boundaries around acceptable behavior at the studio. We used to have an open week at the end of every term so the parents could come in and see how their particular child was developing, etc. But there were really, really clear boundaries and guidelines. And it's really challenging if you, for example, are a basketball coach and you have a dad or a mum, but it often tends to be the dads, not saying it always is, that has played a lot of basketball. So you're the coach, but you have got this particular father who thinks he knows better than you. Well, here's the thing: when a child is on the court and the parent is screaming out, "Guard your player," or "Put your hands out," or whatever, and believe me, I've actually been guilty of this, so I'm going to be really authentic and honest here. When my daughter was playing, I used to call these things out, and guess what? It actually shows, research shows, I should say, that when that happens, the child doesn't know where to focus. They're certainly not focused on the game because they're listening to their coach, they're listening to the parent, etc. So it's all around really creating really clear guidelines. Gatorade did some research. They did a study as to why a lot of teenage athletes drop out in their teens. And it was because of overprotective, over-involved parents. So if you're having that challenge, that's something that I would really recommend if you have a club or if you're just coaching one particular team, pull them together and have a meeting. And just without being judgmental, just explain to them that you really need them. I've mentioned this in a previous podcast, in their lane because they're there to support their child. You're there to give the child the skills or the teenager the skills. Okay. So that's probably the number one mistake that a lot of coaches make is they don't have clear boundaries. And so they've got the parents kind of almost running the show. Can you relate to that? If you can relate to that, give us a thumbs up or a comment yes. And it's a pain in the you know what. The second mistake that, and it's not even a mistake because you don't even know what you don't know, right? I'm actually trained in linguistics. I'm a master practitioner in NLP, which is neuro linguistic programming, how we program our brain or how to reprogram our brain. And within NLP, which was created back in the late 70s, early 80s, I believe, by Richard Bandler and John Grinder, they came up with various styles of learners. Now, that's just one aspect of NLP, but you may be familiar with these. You know, there are primarily visual learners, there are primarily auditory learners, there are primarily kinesthetic learners, and there are primarily auditory digital learners, which is the fourth one that a lot of people don't even know about. So, here's the thing: we coach, speak, and train in our preferred learning style. Have you ever explained a play? Say it's basketball. Go back to basketball. You pull them off in timeout, and you have your little clipboard up there, and you're explaining what play you want them to do, and they go back out on the court, and half the team execute, and the other half are floundering. Has that ever happened to you? Give us a yes if you know what I'm talking about. Well, guess what? It's because there's a language within the language. I'm going to say that again. There's a language within the language. Now you're speaking in your preferred learning style. I'll give you an example. And by the way, I have a whole 14-day challenge on this where I teach coaches all the things. This is just a little tiny aspect of it, but across 6 different modalities. Oops, there goes my there goes my microphone. Okay. Across there are 6 different modalities of learning styles, and I teach you all of them so that you can make sure that your message lands with every single player. I'll give you an example of what I mean by there's a language within the language. You might be a totally visual learner. So you're showing your players the play on a board. You bring them off, you get your clipboard, and you're showing them everything here, right? The kids that are primarily visual will be able to see that and then execute. The auditory ones, if they can't hear you properly, then they're not going to execute. The kinesthetics actually have to use their bodies to learn. So just looking at that play sheet, that's not going to do it with the kinesthetic. You're going to need to physically put their body in the position you want them to be doing, okay? Auditory digitals are very much about systems, processes, logic. So you're going to actually have to explain the play logically. I want you to do this, then this, then this. Or I just want you to do this, just like we've done in training or whatever it might be. Now, here's an example of the language within the language. If you've explained the play, you've had your clipboard up, you've shown them everything, you might be primarily visual and you say to your team, can you see what I mean? Can you see what I want you to do? Okay. Can you see what I want to do? Visual words. If you're an auditory learner, then you've explained it all. Yeah. You probably have a really lovely voice. People that are primarily auditory have those fabulous voicemail messages like, hi there, thanks for calling. The timbre and the quality of their voice is amazing. Anyway, someone that's primarily auditory would say, do you hear what I do? Do you hear what I'm saying? Right? Do you hear? The kinesthetic coach would say, do you get the gist of what I mean about this play? And the auditory digital coach would say, does that make sense? So there's a language within the language. And here's the thing, as I mentioned before, you're coaching in your preferred learning style. So you're coaching in your language. Well, guess what? It's not going to be everyone in your teams. I promise you, you will not have a whole team, if you're visual, of all visual learners. So you need to learn to expand your linguistics patterns to make sure that your message is going to stick and it's going to land with every member of your team. As I said at the end of this podcast, I'm actually going to share a code for you. Have a 14-day challenge on this, on visual, auditory, kinesthetic, right and left brain, internal, externals, introvert, ambivert, extroverts, I achieves, we achieves, and internal and external learners. Okay? Because all those facets make up every single player on your team. And they're going to have a preferred way. So when you start to expand your linguistics and the way that you run your trainings based on all those modalities, guess what? That's when the magic's going to happen, because you're getting through to every single player. I'll give you an example of one of them. Oh, and the Bernice McCarthy method, I forgot about that. She has the format method, which meaning number 4. In a nutshell, there are 4 questions that the different styles of learners will do. So, for example, you might have players that turn up to practice, and every week tend to start your practice and your training the same way. So you might have one of your players come up to you and say, why do we always have to start with suicides? Or why do we always have to start with whatever the way that you start? Okay. They need to know why. Why is it going to be that way? Now, I'm a why learner. I used to drive my mother nuts because I would ask her something and I would keep on asking, but why, until I got a good answer. I actually asked my year 7 math teacher, why do I have to learn Pythagoras theory? Where am I going to use it in my life? Now, she just said to me, oh, you've just got to learn it. And then she also proceeded to tell me my brain didn't work that way. Is it any wonder that I used to flunk math? Okay. She didn't give me a good reason. Okay. So if you have why learners, which you will in your team or in your athletes, if you're coaching individual athletes, you have to give them a really good response that they can relate to, not just that they've got to do it. Is this making sense? Or is this making sense? Now, making sense is an auditory digital word. So there's the why learners, there's the what learners. What are we going to do today, coach? They'll burst into the gym and they'll want to know what you're going to do. Now, if you don't tell them you just say, oh, you'll find out, chances are some of them might just switch off. Okay? Explain to them what you're going to do and you'll have their light bulbs will come on. The third style of the format method, Bernice McCarthy, who's a former professional school teacher, by the way, is the how. You might have a player or an athlete that you coach come up to you and go, how am I ever going to get better at my free throws, coach? Okay. And they want to know exactly how they have to practice, right? And then the fourth quadrant is the people that think outside the box. They're the lateral thinkers. And they will ask you things like, what if we tried it this way, coach? You might pull them off in timeout and you suggest a particular play, but your what if learner in the group might say, well, what if such and such guarded that player and I swap places, right? Now, if you shut them down, guess what? They're not going to come up with ideas. And guess what? They might be coming up with a great idea that you're shutting down. So I could go on for days about learning styles, but that's just one of the 6 modalities that you'll learn if you do my. It's called uh, Mental Performance Mastery for basketball coaches. It's not just mental performance mastery. It's basically all about learning styles. It's a 14-day challenge. Each day you'll get a video from me talking about something. There'll probably be a PDF for you to download so that you can work out what style you are in these different learning styles. And then you can create an Excel sheet and work out what all of your players are. And you can start practicing. You can start practicing expanding your linguistics so that your message lands with every member of your team. I had this really successful School of Performing Arts years ago back in Australia. And before I started training in all of this, and by the way, I spent thousands of dollars to learn all of this. So for the amount that you're going to have to pay for the challenge, it's peanuts. You don't have to. It's up to you, of course. But I started training as a professional trainer, and the person that trained me said, Kathryn, you get amazing results. Because we used to win regional, state, national championships year in, year out. My kids used to get honors and honors with distinction for their exams. She said, but you don't know how you get them. You do it intuitively, which means you'll never be able to teach the rest of your teachers to make sure that they're getting the results that you are. By the time you finish this 6-month training, you'll understand all of that. So I'm sharing with you a little bit, just the tip of the iceberg of what I've learned around learning styles. And the reason that I was getting the results I was getting was because my linguistics already covered a lot of styles. My dad was primarily visual. My auntie Belle, ringing the bell, right, was primarily auditory. My mum was primarily kinesthetic. My nan was primarily kinesthetic. And I used to spend a lot of time with my aunt and my nan on weekends. I grew up in pubs and mum and dad wanted me away from the drunks. So the only thing that I had to really work on expanding in my linguistics was the auditory digitals. And the auditory digitals are primarily very left brain. They're very analytical. Okay. I am so nosebleed right brain. When I talked about the format method, there's the why learners, the what learners, the how learners, the what if learners, or where else. Sometimes they ask, where else have I learned something like this? When I was learning to play golf, I went, oh, it's kind of like the follow through of tennis, my tennis swing. And they went, yeah, It is. It's similar to that because I'm a why and a what if or where else learner. Now, they're primarily up here, they're primarily the right brain learners. The what are we going to do and how are we going to do it? Guess what? They're the left brain learners. So, expanding your linguistics is going to make a massive difference in how you communicate with your players. And it's like when you start speaking to cover all the learning styles, which is ideally what you want to be doing. You want to be expanding your linguistics so it lands with every single member of your team. Or if you're giving one member of your team feedback, then you want to know what their learning styles are and communicate with that player in their learning style. Is this making sense? Is this landing? So that's the second mistake is you're just coaching and speaking and training in your learning style, and it's not going to be every member of your teams. But it's easily fixed, okay? The third thing is chances are you're repeating how you were coached. I know I did as a dance teacher. Thankfully, I had a really beautiful dance teacher, and she didn't I mean, back in those days when you did ballet, there were people that hit you on the back of the legs with a ruler and all sorts of horrible things. But I had really beautiful, beautiful teachers. So back to you, how did your coach you? Because consciously you are probably repeating that. Now that might be a really great thing, but the thing is, guess what? You cannot coach this era of young players the way that you were coached because they are a whole different breed. Do you agree? Is this what you're seeing? It's like they just are. And I'm going to talk about why they are in a moment, and I'm going to talk about how you can actually help. The other thing is that a lot of coaches say to me, "Oh my goodness, this era of young kids, they just don't have the grit and the determination. I'm so frustrated. I don't know what to do." Well, there are lots of reasons why that is. Okay. It's not that they don't have grit and determination. They've been through a lot. This particular generation have been through the pandemic. They've got all of the social media distractions. And they've probably got parents that are slightly burnt out trying to juggle all the balls to get them to your training sessions and all the other things that they have to do. So it's interesting. Research shows, and I'm going to quote some things down here, that it's about like one of the problems is there's lots of everybody gets a trophy, right? When everybody gets a participation trophy, that often teaches kids that effort isn't enough. Growth comes from challenge, not from inflated praise. So all of this helicopter parenting and all of this everybody gets a participation thing, it's really not useful because it's causing this young generation to not learn resilience, to not fail and not see it as that they're a failure. Okay. They think they're a failure and then they shut down. And then, yeah, and protecting kids from failing. Like the parent doesn't want the child to fail. I understand that. My girl is 27 now. She's all grown up. But I'll tell you a story. When my daughter was 12, in high school in Australia, we go to high school in year 7. And she was going to be going to this beautiful private girls' school for high school. I know you're meant to be 13 to be on Facebook, but she was going to be going to a school where none of her friends were going. So she had a lot of changes in her life, and one of them was that she was going to high school brand new, and she was ready for it. She was really ready for it, but she was also knowing that she was going to miss interacting with her friends. So I let her go on Facebook. Now the bus for school stopped right outside our place, literally outside our front yard, right? But she, of course, new to Facebook, would have her breakfast, get everything done, or maybe not get everything done, and hop on Facebook. And they'd be messaging or doing whatever they were doing. Well, guess what? She kept missing the bus. And I saved her the first time. Okay. I saved her and I said to her, "Sweetheart, you've got to be more organized. You've got to know what time, put an alarm on your phone or something to know what time you need to be down there to actually catch the bus." And so she did it a second time. And the second time I thought, I'm not going to save her. If I save her, what is that teaching her? So I said to her, no, I'm sorry. You need to start walking to school. And she was terrified because she knew it was going to take her 20 minutes to get to school. And then she was going to have to get a late note. And then she was going to have to explain at the office why she was late. But I had to do that. I had to actually have her learn the lesson. Unfortunately, she started walking to school, and one of her best friend's mothers saw her on the way and actually picked her up. And I had to have a word with that mother and say, I know you were doing her a favor and you thought you were helping, but in actual fact, if you see her walking again, please don't pick her up. She actually needs to learn the lesson. So, protecting our kids from failure, helicopter parenting, and participation certificates and things like that for everybody, it's actually eroding their ability to put in the effort and to be resilient and to be disappointed and go, okay, I didn't get that this year, but I'm going to work extra hard to make sure I get it next year or whatever it be. So, thought leaders and emerging research confirms that this trend creates youth less equipped to handle adversity. It also shows we may be raising kids who aren't resilient. Now, it's not because they lack the talent or the drive, but it's because they rarely have to face challenges. So, what can you do as a coach? That's probably what you're going to be asking right now. Okay. Well, the bottom line is you can pick up the slack and teach them. You can teach them how to have determination and grit and resilience. In order to do that, in order for them to listen, you're going to need, as coaches, to create a psychologically safe environment. Now, what do I mean by that? If you're the sort of coach that when they make a mistake, I'll go back to basketball, but this applies to any sport, whatever sport you're coaching. If one of your players makes a mistake and you go, oh, put your hands on your head, or you scream at them or whatever, do you think that that's creating a psychologically safe environment? No, it's not. Now, the child that gets screamed at home might be able to cope with that, but the child that doesn't get screamed at home is going to shut down and go, coach doesn't like me. Okay? You're getting the understanding of psychologically safe. You need to create a psychologically safe environment. Let me have a little look at my notes because I had some really great things here. And that environment needs to include permission to fail. Okay? Permission to fail. When you've played a game, okay, and your kids got thrashed, how do you speak to them at the end of the game? Do you start chastising them and going, you didn't do the play that I explained, and we practiced this in training, and why didn't you do this, and why didn't you do that? Because guess what? That is not a psychologically safe environment. Your team are going to shut down. They're probably going to feel very awkward. They may even give up. And you don't want that. All the coaches I speak to love what they do. Okay. You got to make sure that the kids love being in your team. So, creating an environment that really is creating psychological safety that has really clear development paths so that they know, oh, when Samara started playing, she was in Potters League, and then they recognized her and she got into a rep squad, which is what we call it back in Australia. It's when you play for your club, but it's not just club basketball, it's you're representing your club. And so she could see, oh, okay, I went into the 10 and unders. I'm going to be in here for 2 years, and I'm going to go up to the 12 and unders, the 14 and unders, etc. A really clear pathway, and also clear pathways of expectations as well. And what else have we got? Autonomy and trust. Your team have got to trust you. They've got to want to follow you. We follow people that we know, like, and trust. Okay? So, what type of coach are you? Do your players know, like, and trust you? Would they follow you? You know how we follow people on social media that we know, like, or trust, or we just think they've got great content. Hopefully, you think that about what I'm doing. Would you follow somebody that you didn't like that you didn't trust or that you didn't know? Of course not. So, our job as coaches is to make sure that we're creating this really nurturing environment. And for those of you that are male coaches and thinking, no, that's not the way I do things, well, guess what? The old school toughness and the way that you are demanding, and I'm not saying you, but some coaches are demanding that that kids turn up already tough. Guess what? They're not going to. Some of them might, based on how they've been parented, but the majority of them are not going to show up that way. So let's move on. What else do we need to get onto? I think that's about it. So the first mistake that coaches make is not clear boundaries around parent expectations. Okay. And it's really great to actually have a meeting. Have a meeting pre-season. Good time of year now if you happen to be playing basketball or whatever sport that you play. Pull your parents aside and have an actual parents meeting, not with the kids, and just say, listen, research shows that I need to be the coach. You're there to applaud your kids, but not to give them direction, because the bottom line is they're going to be distracted. They won't know who to listen to, whether to listen to you or to me. So, can you understand? I really want to be the best coach that your teenager or your young person has ever had. And I need you to stick within your lane, within the boundaries that I'm requiring. I used to have one of these meetings with my dance competition team parents at the beginning of the year, and they signed an agreement. They signed an agreement. Now, I didn't have this issue. I had the issue once with one person, and I taught for over 20 years. And she came to the studio, bless her, and she thought her kids were stars. And she wanted me to give them private lessons, and she wanted me to choreograph solos for them. Now, my structure in my school was, if you wanted to have private lessons with me, you needed to be more than a once a weeker, which they only wanted to come once a week and have private lessons. And there was a system. So you would do classes, and maybe you did one or two classes. Maybe you did a combo ballet jazz tap when you were a little 5-year-old, and then you developed to actually doing all three when you got to 6 or 7. And then at 7 or 8, I might have invited them into my competition teams, right? So there was a process, a really clear process. She wanted to bypass all of that. She just wanted her kids to have private lessons with me and to have solos choreographed for them. And I said, I'm so sorry. That is not how we do things at our school. I did it for about a term. And then I went, you know what? This isn't fair on the other kids that I had, all the rest of my students, because when they get into an Eisteddfod group, they are a team. Okay. And then if I feel that they're ready to do a solo or a duo or a trio, they're invited to. So, getting back to you, do you have really clear guidelines for your team? If you own a club, do you have clear guidelines of being a member of your club? Or if you're purely just coaching a team, doesn't matter how old they are, they're all going to have parents, unless it's actually an adult team, and then you've got very different challenges there. But if you're coaching a young person or a teenager, do you have things in place so that the parents know what's expected of them and what's not okay? And then, is your environment safe? Is it psychologically safe? Do you know how to communicate with each different member of your team in their preferred learning style? And if you don't, which, let's face it, I have not come across any coach over the last 18 years that knows this stuff. So if you are interested in expanding your linguistics, and some of you won't, I know you won't. You'll go, no, I'm going to do things my way. It's always worked. And that's okay if it's working. But if it's not working, or if you'd like to take your coaching to the next level, I really highly recommend that you actually click on a link that my producer is going to share in a moment. And it's not the Inner Game of Winning online program. That's actually the Inner Game of Winning online program, by the way, is a program I'm doing in September. It's going to be for teenage athletes, all on mindset. And it is online. So wherever you are in the country, it's going to work because I'm going to be doing it at 6 p.m. on Sundays, straight after this podcast, from 6 until 8 for 4 Sundays over September. So there's that program. So if you have a team that you know really need to work on their mindset, again, there's not many coaches that I've come across that are trained in mental performance mastery, NLP, hypnotherapy, etc. All of the things that the tools that I have in my toolkit. But the other thing, which I would love, Jason, for you to pop up on the screen, is a link to my website. And on that link, you're going to find different courses and different products that I have on kathrynorford.com. Even if he doesn't put it up, you can go to kathrynorford.com, and on the top right-hand corner, there is a tab that says Success Store. And on the Success Store, you'll see some different products. And one of them is called Basketball Coaches Mindset Secrets 14-Day Challenge. Now, there is a code where you can download this for $40 off. It is on my website for $97. Now, did I explain what you're going to learn? I did in the beginning, all of the different modalities of learning styles. I spent thousands of dollars. I am not kidding you, to learn all of this stuff. It's $97 on my website, but guess what? If you decide you want to do this, and I really hope you do, and I hope that you not only do it, there we go, it's coming up, that you not only do it, but you let me know how you're going, okay? Every day you will get a video, as I mentioned, with me explaining what that day is about. There'll be a PDF for you to do some assessments to work out what you are, the different learning styles, and then to find out what your team are. Okay. And then you'll head over, by the way, to we have a Coaches of Athletes community page on Facebook, and we also have a Coaches of Athletes community on WhatsApp. And you can head over there and ask me any questions you like, and you can post what you're learning or whatever. So as we said on the screen, the coupon code, when you go to download this, instead of $7, if you put in podcast in capitals, I need to go this way when I'm on a screen, in capitals, that will take $40 off. So that comes down to, what do we got? It comes down to $57. $57 for 14 days. Chances are you spend more than that on petrol or on coffee every day for you and your friend or whatever. I really hope that you'll join us, because I know it's going to transform your team, because these are the skills that no one's taught you. Even if you don't join us, I hope you found this really useful. I hope you had some aha moments. I hope you now have some tools so that you don't make the mistakes that most coaches make, that you don't actually not have clear boundaries with parents, that you understand that there is a language within the language, and that not everyone is going to be speaking the same language as you. That repeating the way that you were coached is not going to work with this era. Before I go, I just want to mention to you, a couple of podcasts ago, I did a podcast on the different coaching styles of the Final Four that made it to the Final Four in the NBA. And all 4 coaches had very, very different styles. But I am not surprised one bit that Mark Bagnor, I think his name is, anyway, the OKC coach, that they won the championship, because he had a very, very young team, right? And he knew that he could not drill them the way that perhaps he had been drilled years before, right? He knew that he had to be collaborative. He knew that he needed them to have their input. He had a really calm, collaborative culture he created. And look what happened. They won the championship. So I hope you found this useful. Comment below, share this if you did find it useful, subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you next week when I will be interviewing a guest. Not quite sure who that will be, but it'll be someone fabulous, and we'll be talking about the champion's mindset. So thanks again for joining me. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and ciao for now.
Thanks for watching The Champion's Mindset with Kathryn Orford. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. See you next week